Hi. Okay, so Manmeet and I have joined again today to take forward our study and conversation of Bhagavad Gita. We are on chapter 2. Last week we left at verse 47. Karmanyavadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phal heturbhu ma te sangostavi karmani, which means that you should just focus on doing your own karma or your own work and not be after the fruit or the outcome of what that karma outcome, what it's going to be. And do not consider yourself to be the reason, or your hard work or your effort to be the reason for whatever outcome you get, and never to be indulged or to be attached to the outcome. So basically, it says that put all your attention and intention only in your action and not in its outcome. Don't get attached to it, because you are not the only person, or your action is not just responsible for what the outcome is going to be. And last week, when we started to discuss, it sort of brought forth some reflection points and something. And when I was contemplating more on it, I felt that somewhere in here, in this knowledge, there is also a systemic view of our way of being, because it's sometimes when we are living life or we are just going through processes, our work, we get too narrowly focused and we believe that, okay, as much hard work I'm going to put into something, that much good, effort I'm going to get. And when we do not get a desired outcome, we get really demotivated. So, what I understood from this verse is that at the current moment, the outcome that we are receiving isn't just directly proportional to how much effort we are putting in or what kind of action we are putting it, but it has sort of other elements also involved, which are beyond our control at all the times. So, to get attached to the outcome and then choose our action is not the right way to go about it. Both, it makes a lot of practical sense also. And then also spiritually, it's not correct way of looking at life, because if we have this bent of mind or this point of view that my action is responsible for the outcome, we will always go on manipulating our actions according to what outcome we desire. And it happens quite a lot in life. For example, when we have to, suppose, make a choice of a career, so few people would really sit back, do a reflection, and feel like, okay, what is my nature and what is this best that I do, or where do I feel most connected to? Instead, we all make decision as to, okay, which profession gets us what kind of money, what kind of reputation, which courses to go for. And even if somebody doesn't have a temperament for science or maths or commerce, majority of people are deliberately pushed into those sort of careers and choices. So our everyday life has very little involvement of trying to reflect on what is my swadharma, what is my karma, what is my right direction in life. But it's mostly influenced by, oh, what sort of life I want to live, how much money I want to earn, and what sort of reputation I want to have in society. And so we see that, yeah, Manmeet, please go ahead, share your ideas, whatever shows up for you.
I think I rather talk about myself than share an idea because ideas just get fizzled out. And this
Yeah.
we have been hearing ever since our childhood. Karam kar, phal ki ichha mat kar. I think there's a slight blessing in my life that I did apply it for a long time in my life, and I have seen a change in my energy. So probably people who listen up to us later, I want to say that I have practiced it and I have seen how much freedom you feel in your entire being in doing things you want to do. And because of this change, when I moved to Canada, I think I have become completely trapped back into this outcome driven society. And I have been miserable ever since then. So I have seen that part and this part. I definitely want that one, Meet, the one who was freer, who was not being driven by outcomes. But now I am. And I do free myself in between. But then again, I get trapped because probably the stakes are higher. The situation has changed. So, Komal, I would really like that you uh, point out to the stifling situations we may go through when change happens in our life. It's easier to let go of the outcome in life is a little smooth and stable. When everything comes onto you, it's very easy to get trapped back into that mindset.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't want to bring in my coach's hat right now. I want to stay with Bhagavad Gita because there's a lot in what you've said and shared, Manmeet, because it does happen. And that is what I think Gita also says to us, and that, and most of the times we take on to the path of knowledge or various other paths to explore and find ourselves deeper when we come across these sort of dilemmas in our lives. And when it feels like, okay, whatever seems to be right is very difficult, also. It's challenging in a way, and those dilemmas sort of raise those doubts. But I think those doubts are also good. They are important because then we really make an effort to find the deeper meanings and deeper aspects. So let's see what more we find out in this. Next verse is Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktava dhananjaya siddhi asiddhayo samah bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. So Krishna tells Arjun that yogastha, that means sambhav or be stable and then do your karma by letting go of any sort of attachment. And he says that this sambhav, when you achieve this equanimity or this balance in win or defeat or loss and gain, that state is called as yoga. So here he is also sort of defining what yoga really means. To reach that state of balance and equanimity within us where we are not distracted or deviated by what the outcome are going to be or what is coming our way. Yogastha Kuru Karmani. And so he says this is what yoga really is. So become a yogi or become stable within yourself and then do your action. Take your action. In a way, Krishna also gives the correct definition of yoga. It's not just really doing the exercises or doing the pranayam, but reaching a level of inner balance and harmony within ourselves. Duren havaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddho sharanam anvichah kripana fal hitava. Then he brings in another aspect of yoga. He says, hey Dhananjay, भक्ति के द्वारा समस्त गर्हित कर्मों से दूर रहो और उसी भाव से भगवान की शरण ग्रहण करो। जो व्यक्ति अपने सकाम कर्म फलों को भोगना चाहते हैं वो कृपण है। So now he's bringing an element of yoga, which is bhakti yoga, bhakti or the path of devotion. And in following verses, I think it's going to further explain the significance of that. And so in the first verse, he gave sort of a definition of yoga, that it's the inner balance and equanimity. And by bringing in bhakti yoga, he's also now explaining that what really helps us become that internally balanced and equanimous within us. So he says that again, this word bhav is coming, like किस भाव से आप किसी काम को कर रहे हो. Some people have this tendency that whatever they do, they say, it's God's will. It's God's will, and I'm just doing God's will. So they just devote all their actions or all their efforts to God's will. That's a sense of a devotion, instead of saying that, oh, I did it and I achieved this or I achieved that. And Manmeet, I remember when in some of our previous conversations, when you were sharing about, like some poetry happens and then you say that, oh, I didn't write it. It's God's grace on me that, these words have come, or some story is written. So that sense, that feeling is where you are not owning something, but you are enjoying something, being the enjoyer of some event that has happened to you or happened through you, considering it's a God's will. So, same thing Krishna says in this, that those who get indulged, those who want to enjoy the outcome of their efforts through the involvement of the senses and sensory perceptions, they are very miser. They are very, what we call as conjuice in our language. They are very miser people. So to become equanimous, do your task and just do it like the grace of the God. Exactly. You're right. When we are flowing in a way, when we are working as if it's some sort of a grace on us, we are most productive and we are most free in doing whatever we have to do. So that is an element of bhakti yoga. बुद्धि युक्तो जहाति उभे सकृत दुष्कृते तस्माद् योगाय युजस्व योगः कर्मसु कौशलम. से भक्ति में संलग्न मनुष्य इस जीवन में ही अच्छे तथा बुरे कार्यों से अपने आप को मुक्त कर लेता है. अतः योग के लिए प्रयत्न करो क्योंकि सारा कार्य कौशल यही है. Just what you said just now, that you're most productive when you're operating from that space. That is precisely what is said in here, is that when you are indulged in devotion, or when basically what is devotion, that all your senses, instead of being directed towards the worldly physical achievements, they are directed towards that higher power or that God. And while you're living and doing all your actions, your attention or your sensory attention is on God, and it's not on what is happening out there in the world and what are you getting and what are you not getting. So that is a way of binding all of your senses, the sense of your sight, sensory perceptions, towards God, and that brings you most productivity. Yes. So what you just wrote and said about that, like that is how you can be most productive, is in Gita. That's what's yoga karmasu kaushalam. And I've seen this particular phrase used by a lot of industries and offices as well, where they use this phrase yoga karmasu kaushalam.
Komal, also feel that so since I have experienced and arrived here, and now it's a revelation to me that's part of Gita.
Yeah.
Uh, I also feel that I may not be consciously focusing on the universal force, but because I have surrendered,
Yeah.
I am I'm flowing so much that I don't know what are the words. I don't know who am I. I've totally lost my sense of self in that space,
Hmm.
which helps me to flow. And I am free from the baggage of producing any results. So I'm a free spirit, allowing all the energy, inviting all the energy into me, even though I'm not really sitting and saying, okay, come. I'm just so much in a state of surrender at that time कि मैं तो एक तिनका हूँ, एक पत्ता हूँ, उड़ रहा हूँ, मुझे कायनात लेके जा रही है जहां मैं जा रहा हूँ. In that total state of surrender, you experience this energy. I don't think it's so much of a conscious effort than it is a belief कि कर्म कर और फल की इच्छा मत कर. Period.
And when you compare yourself in those moments vis-a-vis when you feel like, oh my God, you are putting so much of effort, how do you see?
Komal, I don't even have words to describe because that's the state I am right now. And I've been struggling to come out of it because it stifles me. It makes me feel miserable. I feel so limited. I have been reduced as if like to a mortal being. Earlier, I used to feel I am the whole universe.
Hmm.
I used to feel the universe inside. So it's so limiting that thought. It's so limiting. And I know inside that we as beings have no limits. Like they say that if the universe doesn't have a boundary, how can you?
Yeah,
So
you are
this is very
limitless.
stifling, and yeah, I'm so glad I'm going through this revision with you, and I'm just trying to build more and more of my self-awareness to come out of it. That how am I going in a reverse gear when I've experienced this beautiful magical space?
But now that you know that that feeling and that sense of free flowing and surrender is what is the state of yoga is.
Fear. Fear is too high right now that I want to be in control, in
Mm.
spite of knowing there's nothing in your control. In October, when I changed my gears, my energy had gone at a different level again. October, November, December, I was so productive. Back into the truck, and I'm unable to surrender because trying to control things, I have to let go of that control. That's all.
That's exactly what it's saying here because control, like control how and control of what? Because there is something which our senses tell us in the moment that, oh, we need to control something. Otherwise, uh, maybe I'm not safe or I'm not protected or I'm not in a good space. So that's when it's the sensory perceptions like heightened and just sounding it back to us. So it's
Yeah.
like the overall control of our being has been in the hands of these senses. And that's when we are not in that state of being sambhav or being in yoga.
Now that you say it, Komal, I also think there is a mistrust there because the universe has been throwing so many challenges, have begun to mistrust its plan. Is it really looking upon me? Is it really taking care of me? And
Mm.
now, even if I'm saying it aloud, I'm feeling so foolish saying it. Universe always has a plan. हम सब्र नहीं रखते हैं और हम देखना चाहते हैं और हमें जब दिखाई नहीं देता हम घबराते हैं. तो दिखाई तो देगा नहीं, ये तो दिखता नहीं है, ये तो जादू है.
Yeah.
तो ये एक बेवकूफी है दिमाग की और कुछ नहीं है. very acutely aware. I'm feeling so foolish saying it aloud to myself, what I'm saying right now.
That's precisely what somebody else also shared, that they were sharing the story of some sadhu who said that this world or this life is this human existence. What is it? So he said it sheer foolishness, nothing else. And that's what you're saying. So yeah, but we do that foolishness also.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. So all those who are listening, they should know many are there, but thing is to get aware and listen to Gita.
Yes. And that is the thing, because it's not odd to do that foolishness. It's, I think it just tells us that where we are and how close we are. Because, and I think it's important to understand right now, like we are reading it for some purpose. Something has sort of inspired us to read Gita and try and explore more about it. And I know, um I'm not too far away from you. I think I've been very recently been in that space where, you would deviate. Like at one point of time, you are in a total surrender and you say that no, I'm taken care of. Everything in my life is going fine. It's as per the plan. I'm focused into doing what I'm supposed to do. And then something happens and some trigger comes where it just pushes you off rail and you feel like, is it really, is it really, is it really? And then you bring yourself back up again. So I think that is natural to happen with all of us. And then slowly and gradually, I wouldn't say that we develop a habit or something. No, because it is not a space of habit. I think it's just a space of knowing. And when we know something, everything else sort of drops. And in that journey of knowing what is the truth, what is our ultimate truth, I think we need to just know it fully and completely in our being. And mostly we humans, we start by knowing something intellectually, like in our thoughts. Like right now, we are reading Gita and understanding the meaning of the words, and we say, yeah, 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 I know. And interesting bit is, especially these days when all kind of books and knowledge is accessible to all the people around the world more than ever earlier, because we've got Google, we've got YouTube, we've got all of these social media which have sort of, you know, taken over the space of learning from. And we are not just bound to libraries and our schools and books where we'll go and learn something. So it feels to us that, oh, I know it, like I know it, I've heard it somewhere, I've read it somewhere. But that is just knowing something intellectually, right? That is just knowing some words. Do we really know it? Because when we really knowing something means it's absorbed in you, it's imbibed in you, you are one with it. So that is very important to understand, that how do you really know something? Like I know Bhagavad Gita, yeah, I've read it, I know what it means, is different. But to really reflect on it, to really imbibe it, to really bring it in our life and try and test it and experiment with it and go through with it, that is how, when it becomes a part of us at a very, very visceral and real bodily level, that's when we can say that, yes, now I know. And we will get to know that, yeah, I really know something, when that dilemma, that distraction, and that going to and fro is going to stop. So I think there is no harm in it. It just indicates that we still need to know it in the ways that we become this. Yes, Manmeet, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Komal. Very, very important distinction. I just want to add that, in fact, the statement that I know is our biggest hindrance in our knowing. We say we know, we pack it away, whereas we have not brought it to our life. So just the moment you say, I know, question it and really, really look into your life and into yourself. Have you really, really experienced it? Is it part of you? So, yeah. So, probably I knew it at a certain level, and I only know that this falling will only bring in bigger faith and more surrender eventually. My falling is important right now.
And you would also notice in various traditions, the same thing is said over and over again. Like in some Sufi Qawwalis, also, you say, I don't remember exactly who wrote these words, but I think it was Kabir only. It or some Sufi poet, somebody wrote like बी का बात अधम की कहन सुनन की नाही जो जाने सो कहे नहीं जो कहे सो जाने नाही छाप तिलक सबलीनी yeah, Amir Khusro's kalam,
That's Amir Khusro.
that's Amir Khusro. And so he's saying the same thing. He's writing about love and devotion, but then he says the same thing, that those who know, they don't say it, but those who say it, they don't really know it. So when you said that saying that I know it is the impediment in the way of knowing it, that's correct. And the same thing is said about Brahman and Atman and enlightenment also. Like those who are truly enlightened will never claim that, oh, I am enlightened. Like others would know it by just being in their presence, that, oh, this person is really wise and enlightened. But they would never say it because they're just one with it and they don't even know the distinction. Like when you're in the middle of the ocean, like a drop of water, how does a drop of water distinguish itself from ocean? It doesn't know. So next verse is कर्मजं बुद्धियुक्ता हि फलं त्यक्त्वा मनीषिणः जन्मबन्ध विनिर्मुक्ता पदम गच्छन्ति अनामयम्. इस तरह भगवत भक्ति में लगे रहकर बड़े बड़े ऋषि मुनि अथवा भक्तगण अपने आप को इस भौतिक संसार में कर्म के फलों से मुक्त कर लेते हैं. इस प्रकार वे जन्म मृत्यु के चक्र से छूट जाते हैं और भगवान के पास जाकर उस अवस्था को प्राप्त करते हैं जो समस्त दुखों से परे है. This is again the significance of bhakti yoga. यदा ते मोह कलिलम बुद्धि बुद्धि व्यतितिरक्षित तदा गन्ता असि निर्वेदम श्रुतसव्य श्रुतस्य च. जब तुम्हारी बुद्धि मोह रूपी सघन वन को पार कर जाएगी तो तुम सुने हुए तथा सुनने योग्य सब के प्रति अन्य मनस्क हो जाओगे. Wow. So here he brings this mohrupi saghan one, that means this dense forest of attachment, moh, like attachment to certain things, and it could be anything. He says when your intellect will go through this forest of dense attachment, then you will become detached or disassociated from whatever you are listening. And here, when he says whatever you're listening, he's basically speaking about the Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas, and all kind of, the book of knowledge. So this is somewhere, uh, I think, in line with what we've been discussing about knowing and not knowing. So those who've read the books of wisdom, the Vedas and Upanishads, may say that, oh, I know this, I've read, and I'm the party, or I'm the wise person. And he says, when your intellect goes away from any sort of attachment, because even being called a wise person, or being known as somebody who's knowledgeable, who's read so much, is also a sort of an attachment. So one, he says that the attachment is like a very dense forest, like to go through it is not easy, one. And then he says that is the way you have to go through it and beyond it, so that you become, you know not attached with any kind of, like, what have you read and how much have you read or how much you know. You will be having no association or attachment to that. So in a way, he's also indicating that the beach or the seed of that sort of keeps us in the bind or in the loop and away from the real awakening is this attachment. And that attachment could be towards any object, any sense, or any perception. That is important for us. Shruti vipratipanna te yada sthasyati nischala samadho achala बुद्धि तदा योगम अवाप्स्यसि. जब तुम्हारा मन वेदों की अलंकारमयी भाषा से विचलित न हो और वह आत्म साक्षात्कार की समाधि में स्थिर हो जाए, तब तुम्हें दिव्य चेतना प्राप्त होगी. So beautiful, where he is indicating that instead of approaching more on the outside world, like, okay, what is Veda saying? What is Upanishad saying? He says, get your intellect or get your perception stabilized in, when he says Atma Sakshatkar, which means self reflection or meeting yourself, like when you would be one with yourself, when you would reach that level of self through self reflection, then you would find that awakening or that enlightenment, that, okay, what is really the truth? So he's showing that the path and the way to reach this awareness is within yourself, within the self reflection. Then after this, Arjun asks him, Sthit pragyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshavah sthitadhi kim prabhashet kim asit brajet kim. So he asks, now he gets curious now that he hears all of this from Krishna. And when Krishna is explaining to him that you have to go through your attachment and, do some self reflection, and that is the path to go to, then he wants to know more. And he asks him, like, so he uses this word sthit pragya, that means अध्यात्म में लीन चेतना वाले व्यक्ति के क्या लक्षण है, वो कैसे बोलता है, और उसकी भाषा भाषा क्या है, किस तरह बैठता और चलता है. So he is now curious to know कि when somebody becomes like that, achieves that level of yoga with self and has attained that balance and equanimity in self, how do we identify such a person? Like, how would this such a person speak? How would such a person move or do things? Like, how do we really identify? And this shows, like that's also another way of, trying to find out the path to, like what is the right action towards moving to that space where you are actually balanced. You have attained that inner harmony and peace, and you can be said as enlightened. So, after this, Krishna would explain to Arjun the signs of such a person who has attained this inner equanimity. Should we continue, or should we continue this next week? Because I'm thinking all of those would again open up new things to reflect for us.
You can take your call, Komal. I'm completely okay with it.
Okay,
If
all
it's a
right.
lengthy discussion, we can wind up now.
We can just start, and I think then we can, yeah, leave in another 5 minutes, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe we just do one more verse, and verse 55, and then we can continue next week. Shri Bhagwan Uvach, Shri Krishna speaks, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parth manah gatan atmani ev atmana tushta sthit pragyah tada uchyate. Hey Parth, he says, addresses to Arjun, जब मनुष्य मनोधर्म से उत्पन्न होने वाली इंद्रिय तृप्ति की समस्त कामनाओं का परित्याग कर देता है और जब वह इस तरह से विशुद्ध हुआ उसका मन आत्मा में संतोष प्राप्त करता है, तो वह विशुद्ध दिव्य चेतना को प्राप्त कहा जाता है. So here he uses the word मनोधर्म से उत्पन्न होने वाली इंद्रिय तृप्ति की समस्त कामनाओं का परित्याग. So here the word man is like one part of mind, as mind is described in some of the Upanishads. So mind has four functions: manas, buddhi, chitti, and ahankara. And manas is basically the sensory perception organs that we have. And so five organs of sensory perception, five organs of action that we take after perceiving whatever we're doing. And so whatever is originated from those sensory perceptions, and he says that he uses a word indriya tripti, which means for the satisfaction of our sensory perceptions or our senses, which means what is looking good to my eyes, what is looking good, sounding good to my ears, what taste I like or I don't like. And so, how does these senses get satisfied? If I see something beautiful, I'll be like, oh my God, such beautiful thing. And my sense of sight is getting satisfied. Then my sense of hearing gets satisfied by maybe listening to classical music, or somebody's sense could be satisfied listening to rock band or something like that. And if I don't hear, or if I don't go and listen to those kind of things, it becomes a challenge. And so he says, when we let go of this need for satisfying our senses, so we derive a sense of, I don't know how to translate the word santosh, because santosh is such a feeling which I know at a level like what it is. I think it's like a deep sense of, I think, enoughness. If you have any other better word, Manmeet, please share it.
I It's contentment basically, but
Contentment,
I
yeah.
like enoughness better because our greed is never ending.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to share something very specific. When I got married, although like I got married in this same like we are Jats, so I got married in a Jat family. So I knew we speak similar kind of languages. But I grew up in a house where we would mostly speak Hindi, and although I knew the Haryanvi dialect and language, but I wasn't used to listening it all the time, like 24 hours. And when I got married and started to live with my husband and his family, they would mostly speak in the local dialect of Haryanvi. And I had this, I mean, everything is fine, but I had this very, a sense of unease cropping up in me, and I couldn't point it out like, okay, what is happening to me? And after a few months, when I visited my hometown, my home, and I entered my home, and when everybody was sitting and talking, suddenly it dawned on me. I was like, oh my God, this is what was really bothering me for so long. So for so many years, I'm just used to listening certain kind of voices, certain kind of dialect, and just going in an environment where my sense of hearing is not getting that dialect, but it's getting bombarded with a completely different language and dialect. I developed some sort of a unease inside me. And so most of the times I think we do not give so much of emphasis, or do not reflect as much to see that how these different senses sort of bind us towards a certain way of life, or towards a certain way of being, or choosing this I like and that I don't like, and make our perceptions and our ideas and our beliefs around that. It all begins from this minute aspect of what satisfies our senses. And so that's where Krishna says that when you let go of that, so a certain level of santosh, or that contentment or enoughness sort of comes within you, which is one of the indication of a sthit pragya, or a person who has achieved that inner equanimity. And I think next shlok we can pick up next week. But I guess you wanted to share something, Manmeet.
It's very revealing, what you just shared, Komal, because I have run away from Punjabi for the longest period of my life because I used to find the language very harsh, crass, and the sound falling on my ears has not only pushed me away from the language but also the people who have been speaking it. And I realized that how limiting our area becomes when we are pleasure driven,
Mm.
when we are trapped in our own likes and dislikes. So, and then we say, हर तरफ हर जगह बेशुमार
Beshmar.
आदमी फिर भी तन्हाइयों का शिकार आदमी. तो खुद ही तो दायरे बना रखे हैं, खुद ही वॉल्स बना रखी हैं, तो लोग तो हैं आसपास, आप ही नहीं मिलना चाहते हो, छानते जा रहे हो लोगों को. So it's it's just hit me so hard, the example you've used. And I think in Man's Search for Meaning, I also remember Victor talking about this, that how it's not the pleasure, it's the purpose that drives you. So if you're trapped in the pleasure, you are going to run out of steam very fast. And that's what happens with us day in, day out. Uh, the food is not good. You didn't talk to me nicely. The clothes, the demeanor, the behavior. And I think even before we dislike someone else, we begin to dislike ourselves at so many places.
Yes.
We're just filling our life with likes and dislikes, and it's a pleasure driven life. It is not a life which is encompassing all the colors and variety of the universe which has offered us.
Absolutely. And if you see, pleasure is the faculty of senses.
Yeah.
Purpose is
And
being
having
contented.
said that, Komal, I don't know. I think I'm very far from here. So I may have brought purpose into my work, into my relationships, but I don't think I am far from these sensory perceptions. I am very pleasure driven still. I may still not be able to tolerate a harsh language coming my way and being spoken in a certain way. I am going to be very, very mindful from today after this example. Yet, I think this area I'm a long way to go, and it's very, very interesting to see how much we have pushed away because of on the basis of our likes and dislikes.
Yeah. And one another, I think, distinction in this space is that as long as we are in this body, these senses are going to be there.
Yeah.
And there will be these ideas because we've also learned, we've grown up having our own specific learnings also. So there would definitely be certain things which would please us more. I mean, yes, a beautiful red rose appeals more to our eyes than some garbage standing in some corner. Nobody likes to look at that. But then the whole point is to and if you are made to choose, like, okay, what would you like to have? Of course you'll say, yeah, give me the roses. No, nobody would like to have the garbage. But if somehow you don't get the rose, then too, if are you fine with that? Can you do something with that also? So not having such a huge reaction to it, like, oh my god, I hate it, or I love that. So instead of saying I love this and I hate that, you say it like, yeah, this is a beautiful rose and that's a not so pleasing garbage, and that's what it is. It's okay. Like,
Yeah, I think again that is the state of sambhav, a detachment, where you're neither too attached to the rose nor you are repulsed by the
yeah.
garbage. So two things which I'm realizing. Probably I'm so miserable here in Canada is because I'm looking for my sensory pleasures here, which I'm not getting anymore, which I'm missing the language around me, the food around me, the aroma around me. So I'm realizing increasingly that.
And it's so deep, just going through a day of not having sun outside and just this coldness and grayness around your body, it's huge. It causes so much of like depression and so much of a sense of aloneness and aloofness inside us. How does that come to be? Because our sense of touch is getting impacted. Whereas if you just give yourself a warm, cozy blanket, you get a relief and it feels like, oh, okay, your life is good. It's okay. So these senses impact us at very, very deep visceral levels. After all, they're a part of our body, our being. So I think there's
Has that
a lot.
not been given to us, Komal? Like you said, they are part of your body. So let's say about a baby. A baby begins with the pleasure of suckling.
Yes, yes,
So right from our very existence, we are used to and driven by that pleasure.
yeah.
So even if the child is not hungry, the child baby still wants to suckle because it's pleasurable, it's soothing for her to be close to the mother's chest. मतलब मुझे कई बार लगता है षड्यंत्र रचा पूरा कायनात ने हमारे लिए.
To first get us trapped into the Maya and then take us out of it. But
Yeah,
I
that's
have
what it says in Conversations with God, the book, the three-part series that
yeah.
God created the existence to experience the fullness because he couldn't have experienced all by himself. So he created us, those wanderers. And
That's the game. You
oh God, it feels like the Truman Show where we are in the show and now we realize we are in the show. I
and
want to be
we
out of
have
the
to
show.
now figure out that, oh God, we are in the game. Oh, we have to find a way out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like the Matrix, right? We'd got to realize, oh, I am the Matrix. Oh, so I can change the game. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think you should pen down all these real life connections we are forming now. It may just come out as a book of connections with Gita in real life.
Yeah, we'll see. That's I think the whole purpose of these conversations is so that we can see, what it gets evoked in us and how do we sort of understand and make it us. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ko.
Thank you. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.